Diddy's not just facing one bad accusation. Prosecutors say he built an entire system around himself, a machine fueled by intimidation, money, and silence. According to the federal indictment, this wasn't a celebrity gone wild. It was something much darker. They claim he ran a full-on criminal enterprise. That phrase might sound dramatic, but here's what it means. Multiple crimes committed over years by a network of people working for a single purpose: protecting Diddy, serving his ego, and expanding his influence. His label, his entourage, even some employees were allegedly part of the setup. And it wasn't just partying and bad behavior. The crimes listed are heavy: sex trafficking, kidnapping, arson, obstruction, witness tampering. One of the most shocking claims is that these weren't isolated. They were patterns, organized, repeated, planned. Federal prosecutors say that's what qualifies this as racketeering. It's the same charge used against organized crime bosses, except this time it's aimed at one of the most famous names in music. And here's where it gets real. To prove racketeering, the prosecution doesn't need to prove every accusation. They only need 2 serious crimes. Just 2. And if the jury believes even a fraction of the testimonies coming up, Diddy could be done. But testimonies are where this case really takes off. And the first one came from someone who knew him better than anyone. Cassie didn't just date Diddy. She lived in his world for over a decade. And when she finally spoke out, she didn't hold back. In court, she described a relationship that wasn't just toxic, it was terrifying. She said she was forced into long, drug-fueled sex events known as freak-offs, where she had to perform in front of others, often with people she didn't know. Sometimes, even when she was sick or injured, she says it didn't matter. These sessions went on for hours, sometimes days. She claimed Diddy controlled every part of her life: her money, her career, her body, even her sleep schedule. She said staff would follow her, monitor her, and report back to him. In one moment that shook the courtroom, she said she once had to carry a weapon for him, just in case. But it wasn't just about control. She also alleged repeated violence, physical beatings, sexual assault, public humiliation. Her lawyers showed the jury photos, text messages, even footage to back it up. In one disturbing detail, she said she developed medical issues from these forced encounters, but still had to keep going. One of the most chilling accusations, that he once raped her in her own home. Cassie's story painted a picture of a man who used power, money, and fear to dominate someone completely. But the prosecution didn't rely on her alone. They brought in other voices, some who barely knew her, but still saw the warning signs. The next testimony didn't come from an ex. It came from someone Diddy allegedly wanted to destroy. Kid Cudi's name wasn't one people expected to hear in this trial, but when he took the stand, things shifted. He told the court that years ago, after getting close to Cassie, his car, a Porsche, mysteriously went up in flames. At first, it sounded like a bizarre coincidence. Then came the follow-up. A fire investigator confirmed the blaze wasn't random, it was targeted. An explosive device had been used. Even more unsettling, a police officer who responded to the scene ran a license plate on a black Escalade parked nearby. It traced back to Bad Boy Productions, one of Diddy's companies. Cudi also described another disturbing moment. A break-in at his home. Gifts were opened, items were moved. It didn't feel like a robbery. It felt personal. That same Cadillac, seen outside again. The implication was clear. Someone sent a message. Years later, Diddy allegedly apologized, but never explained what exactly he was sorry for. The prosecution used all of this to support one of the key pillars of the racketeering charge: arson. And they weren't just trying to show Diddy acted violently, they were building a case that he used fear to silence and punish, that he had people to do the dirty work, and that no one, celebrity or not, was untouchable. But the person who really exposed how deep the fear went wasn't a musician. It was someone who worked for Diddy and knew what happened behind closed doors. Capricorn Clark wasn't a girlfriend. She wasn't a rival. She was Diddy's assistant. And what she described in court left people stunned. She claimed Diddy showed up at her home in Los Angeles, armed, and ordered her into a car. No time to explain. No choice but to obey. He allegedly forced her to join him on a trip to Kid Cudi's house, where she watched him and his bodyguards storm inside. She told the jury she was terrified, not just because of what was happening, but because of what he said. According to her, Diddy told her he would kill her if she ever spoke to police. And that wasn't an empty threat. She claimed he'd said similar things before. At one point, she says he warned her to never speak to Suge Knight again, or he'd have to end her. That wasn't the only time she felt trapped. She testified about a separate incident, missing jewelry, and Diddy wanting answers. She said he locked her in a building and made her return for 5 days straight to take lie detector tests. No police, no lawyers, just his people and his rules. What made her testimony stand out was the timeline. She said things got worse over time, that the drug use escalated, that Cassie seemed more isolated, that staff became more fearful, and maybe most importantly, Capricorn wasn't part of the freak-offs, wasn't romantically involved, and wasn't suing. She was just someone who saw too much and finally decided to talk. But she wasn't the last to back up what Cassie said. Someone else came forward with more disturbing details, and they had nothing to gain from speaking out. Deontay Nash wasn't a bodyguard or a music executive. He was Diddy and Cassie's stylist, but his role put him close enough to see what most people never did. In court, Nash described moments that painted a brutal picture. He said he personally saw Diddy slap and kick Cassie hard enough to draw blood. Once, he even tried to step in, only to get shoved and screamed at himself. According to his testimony, Diddy's violence wasn't occasional. It was frequent, and everyone around him knew not to interfere. He also recalled packing bags for Cassie, bags filled with sex toys. He said she often told him she didn't want to go on these trips, but she went anyway, because Diddy said so, and it didn't stop there. Nash claimed Diddy once searched his home without warning, looking for Cassie. He even checked the oven. Nobody could figure out why, but the message was clear. Diddy didn't care about boundaries. He also said he overheard Diddy threaten to release private footage of Cassie if she ever disobeyed. Nash described a constant atmosphere of tension, Cassie walking on eggshells, staff watching every move, and fear hanging over everything. What made Nash's account powerful was what he didn't ask for. He wasn't filing a lawsuit. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was subpoenaed, told his story, and left. Just a guy caught in the middle who finally said what he saw. The prosecution was building momentum, but the next witness changed the mood because he didn't say what anyone expected. Then came a surprise, a dancer known as the Punisher. He wasn't there to talk about abuse or threats. He was there because he had been in the freak-offs. According to his testimony, Cassie never seemed uncomfortable during the encounters. He claimed she looked calm, participated willingly, and gave no signals that anything was wrong. From his point of view, it all seemed like something she agreed to. On the surface, this should have helped the defense, but prosecutors used it to make a different point. Just because someone looks calm doesn't mean they feel safe, and just because something looks consensual doesn't mean it is. Cassie had already testified that she felt like a boy, that she did what she was told out of fear. Fear of violence, fear of humiliation, fear of what Diddy might do to the people she loved. By the time the Punisher got involved, she might have stopped fighting back, not because she was okay with it, but because she knew she couldn't win. This testimony added complexity. It didn't blow up the case, but it gave the defense a window to argue that Cassie wasn't as controlled as the prosecution claimed. And that's exactly the angle they leaned into next, turning the spotlight back on her and everything she said. Once the prosecution finished laying out its case, the defense wasted no time hitting back. Their strategy: undermine Cassie's credibility and reframe the entire narrative. They pointed to old messages and emails, some where Cassie appeared to arrange freak-offs herself. In one exchange, she even seemed to encourage them. The defense argued that this wasn't someone being trafficked. It was a willing partner in an unusual but consensual relationship. They also brought up the timeline. Cassie had stayed in contact with Diddy long after the worst alleged incidents. She traveled with him, partied with him, even met up years later. At one point, they highlighted a final encounter between them that she described as consensual, even though it took place after the alleged rape. And then came the biggest swing. If this was all so violent, why did she go back? Why did she keep coming around? Why didn't she tell someone sooner? To help answer that, the prosecution had already brought in a psychologist, someone who explained how control, trauma, and fear can twist a person's choices, that someone can be trapped without chains, that staying doesn't mean it was safe. But the defense didn't let up. They painted the entire relationship as chaotic, emotional, and toxic, but not criminal. Just two people stuck in a dark cycle, not a criminal enterprise. And yet, even with all that doubt, 2 moments from Cassie's story kept coming back. 2 moments caught on camera, hard to explain away, and even harder to ignore. The first was caught on hotel security footage. It shows Diddy in nothing but a towel, chasing Cassie down a hallway. Seconds later, he's seen dragging her back toward the room. Cassie says it happened after she refused to participate in a freak-off. Security guards later confirmed there was another person waiting in the room, someone she didn't want to see. The second happened on a private jet. Cassie claimed Diddy sat next to her, pulled out his phone, and showed her old sex tapes, footage she thought had been deleted. He told her he'd ruin her if she stepped out of line. When the plane landed, he demanded another freak-off. She said no. He told her to get ready anyway. These moments hit differently. They weren't just stories, they were events with physical evidence. The hotel had footage. The jet incident lined up with texts and testimony from others. And together, they checked every box the prosecution needed. Even if the jury questioned everything else, these 2 points could still be enough. But what this trial really exposed isn't just what happened behind closed doors. It's how far power can stretch when no one says no. What started as whispers has now turned into one of the most serious celebrity trials in years. This isn't about headlines anymore. It's about witnesses, evidence, and patterns that span more than a decade. From A-list artists to former assistants, from burned cars to hidden cameras, the prosecution is painting a picture of a man who used fame as armor and fear as a weapon. The defense says it's all exaggerated, that this was just a messy relationship gone wrong with no crime at its core. But the testimonies didn't come from tabloids. They came from people who lived in Diddy's shadow. Some loved him, some worked for him, some feared him, and the scariest part, their stories don't sound that different. The court hasn't made its decision yet, but what this case has already revealed may be bigger than one verdict, because if even half of this is true, then what we're watching isn't just a trial. It's the unmaking of an empire. So what do you believe? Is Diddy the victim of a takedown, or was the truth just waiting to explode?